Our first story comes from a woman named Chloe. It was late spring, and she decided to hike a popular, well-marked loop trail at a state park a few hours from her home. She was an experienced hiker, and she'd done her research. The trail was supposed to be a straightforward 4-mile loop. She started around 10 in the morning, her backpack stocked with water, snacks, and a first aid kit. The first hour was perfect. The sun filtered through the canopy, painting the forest floor in shifting patterns of light and shadow. She passed a few other hikers, exchanging polite nods and smiles. Everything felt normal. But around the 1-hour mark, the people stopped. The trail began to narrow more than she expected. The well-trodden path started to look a little fainter, a little more overgrown. She checked her map on her phone, but she'd lost service a while back. She wasn't overly worried. The trail was clearly marked with blue blazes on the trees. She just kept following them. Then she noticed the first strange thing. The blazes changed. They were still blue, but they looked fresher, newer. And instead of simple splotches of paint, they started to look more deliberate. Almost like arrows. A low, uneasy feeling began to settle in her stomach. The forest around her had grown dead silent. No birds, no insects, nothing. Just the sound of her own footsteps and her breathing. She decided to turn back. But when she turned around, the path behind her looked just as unfamiliar as the one ahead. And those blue arrow-like blazes were on the trees in both directions. That's when she heard it. A crack of a branch, too heavy to be a squirrel. It came from her left, deep within the thick brush. She stopped dead, her heart hammering against her ribs. She called out, "Hello." Her voice was swallowed by the trees, producing no echo. Nothing. The silence rushed back in, thicker than before. She started walking again, faster now. The arrows on the trees seemed to be placed more frequently, urging her forward. The path began to slope downward into a damp, dark part of the woods she was sure wasn't on the map. The air grew cold. And then she saw it. Through a break in the trees, about 50 yards off the path, was a small, dilapidated cabin. It looked ancient, with a sagging roof and windows that were just dark, empty holes. But it was the clearing around it that made her blood run cold. Dozens of stacks of stones were arranged in neat, concentric circles around the cabin. Cairns. And hanging from the low branches of the surrounding trees were things. Bits of fur, twisted vines shaped into symbols, and weathered bones tied together with twine. This was wrong. This was deeply, terribly wrong. A sound reached her ears then. A whisper so faint she thought it was the wind. But it had a rhythm to it. A cadence. It was coming from the direction of the cabin. Pure, primal fear took over. Chloe turned and ran. She crashed through the undergrowth, not following the path anymore, not looking for blazes. She just ran, branches scratching at her arms and face, her breath coming in ragged sobs. She doesn't know how long she ran, but eventually, she burst out onto a familiar part of the main trail, startling a family of hikers. They looked at her, covered in dirt and scratches, her eyes wide with terror, and asked if she was okay. She couldn't even form words. She just pointed back the way she came and stumbled towards the parking lot. Later, at the ranger station, shaken and sipping a cup of water, she told her story. The ranger's face grew pale. He showed her an updated park map. The trail she described, the one with the arrow blazes leading down into that hollow, it didn't exist. It had never been there. And as for the cabin, he just shook his head slowly and said, "To this day, Chloe doesn't know what path she followed, what she saw in that clearing, or what was whispering to her from the darkness of those empty windows. She just knows that something in those woods wanted her to find it."